It's the Ambiguously Blind podcast with your host, a guy that's great at hearing, but terrible at listening, John Grimes.
Hey, greetings, welcome. Thanks for tuning in and subscribing. Please connect with us and get social on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Just search Ambiguously Blind or go to our website, ambiguouslyblind.com. There you'll find the link to all of our social media, as well as links to products that we discuss on the podcast, links to the merch store, and our Patreon page, which really help keep the podcast going, as well as transcripts to most episodes, like this one. I've recently reconnected with an old friend of mine, Adam Weiner. We're going to talk about the good old days and follow his path through the Naval Academy into becoming a Navy SEAL and what he's up to these days. Hey, Adam. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, John. Really cool to be here with you.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about Navy SEAL stuff today. You're a former Navy SEAL. And
True statement.
I am very interested in all things Navy SEAL. And we're also going to talk a lot about what you're doing these days anyway. But I want to kind of start with, we go back pretty far, back to the high school days.
Indeed. It's an awesome opportunity. I love that reconnecting, and obviously we're friends and we have mutual friends, so it's been a real pleasure just reconnecting. So this is fun.
Yeah, and I've talked to a few friends of ours as well, just to see what things I should be talking to you about as it pertains to the old days. And there's a lot of things that were good memories. I remember the banyos from back in the day with the soccer team. You remember any of those times?
I do. I only fond memories. So yeah, a few of us would come out to cheer on the high school soccer team, Plano Senior High School, and specifically, I'll call him out. So Ryan Walker was our big star there that we were cheering for. But anytime the team would, do something or score a goal, we'd all go into our chant, and of course we had to have our shirts off and our chests painted and our big hats on. But it got a little, I think we got a little press. I want to say the Plano Star Courier got a picture of us in there at one point or another. So it was great times, great memories for sure.
And Ryan was a star. He's good, and the team was good too. They won the state championship.
It did.
If we're going to date ourselves here, in 1995, I believe.
Yeah, junior year, I want to say they were state champs, and senior year, I think they went to state and they lost in the finals, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but those were good years for soccer and good years for the Banyos, right?
Yes, probably better for soccer, but pretty solid for the Banyos as well.
And it was those times for you when you were trying to figure out what you're going to do in your life, just like everybody else was. But you'd kind of, I think, made a decision in your mind of what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I did. I had aspirations to be in the military, and specifically, I wanted to attend the Service Academy. I wanted to go to the Naval Academy. It seemed a bit out of reach, so I was kind of preparing to enlist. But as it turns out, I in a roundabout way got myself to the Naval Academy, and so yeah, it consumed a great deal of time, kind of like trying to get my grades up and retaking the SAT many times, never really getting what I needed to get, and then of course the Banyos took up kind of the other half of the time.
That was probably probably would have stayed away from the Banyos. Maybe would have got you there a little quicker, I think. But
that's right.
But like, I think also physically speaking too, you're talking about grades and things. But I mean, you were a cross country runner. I know that.
Oh yeah.
And
yep,
I think so that probably does well for you, especially kind of going forward with in the Naval Academy and with the SEAL stuff, as well as I think you were really into swimming back in those days too, right?
I wanted to. I had it in my head that maybe one day I could put in to be a SEAL. I never really took it too seriously, but seriously enough that I did some prep. So I swam just to stay in shape. I was never a fast swimmer per se, but just wanted to be comfortable in the water and just to get a healthy way to cross train. And yeah, for sure, anyone who does a sport, wrestling, cross country, swimming, kind of you're trapped in your own head to push yourself. I think there's a lot of good kind of individual lessons learned on, that internal conversation of, hey, did I give my best today? And do I have a little bit more? So that always helps in any endeavor where you're going to be challenged, having those experiences.
You said you wanted to serve. Did you have any family experience with that, or history rather, or you just felt like you had a calling for that, or what was the genesis of that?
Yeah, it was really it was pure. I just liked the idea of giving back. I thought we, had a pretty good deal growing up in North Dallas, Plano, and I noticed that kind of the news would catch my eye where places on the other side of the globe were not doing so well. And I thought, gosh, these kids, they didn't do anything to deserve that. And I didn't do anything to deserve how good I have it. So it was more of a, hey, I only appreciate things that I earn. And so in a way, I just kind of wanted to give back in arrears. And so I was excited for the opportunity to serve. I would say that paired with the fact that I wanted to be successful and I struggled academically. So, I wasn't a total rock, but and the school didn't come easy to me, and it just seemed like a good fit. I like the idea of getting out, opportunity to travel, work with different people, work on teams. I love being on teams. So just the more I kind of wrapped my head around the military, the more it appealed to me, and it just clicked. It was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As it relates to family, not really. I mean, my father did spend a little bit of time in the Vietnam time frame in the Army Reserves, but it wasn't a pleasant experience for him. So it was really just more of something that I wanted to do. There was no real family pressure there. If anything, it was probably the other direction.
Okay, so you're swimming, you're trying to you're working on your grades, your cross country experience is helping you. The Banyos are doing everything they can, and you get to the point where this is what you're going to do. So, like, walk me through the process for being accepted in the Naval Academy. Not everybody gets in there, and there's some things you have to do to get in, right?
Yeah, I mean, just like any other college, you're applying to it, but all the service academies require that you have to have a nomination from your respective congressman or woman. It can come from a state senator, U.S. that your senator rep. But the whole point of that is that these are federally funded institutions. So, the idea is that we don't want the crazy military guys to run off with the institution. So we need to make sure that the civilian-led government has an appropriate say-so. And that's the genesis of that extra requirement. And people think, oh, well, you have to be in the pocket of the politician. It's not really that way. I mean, the politicians, they respectively farm out a committee to build a board, and you're applying to that respective congressman, congresswoman, just like you would another school. And so you have that extra wicket, obviously, so that more wickets to jump through. But that's the process, and it gets competitive because only so many people from each district can get into the school. So it's tight.
Okay, so do you remember who you got the nomination from and what happens from there?
So I got my nomination from Congressman Dick Armey. And what happens from there is, that's exciting if you get your nomination. So that's back in that day, that was a physical letter. It actually showed up in the mailbox, there was no email in 1996, or maybe there was, but I didn't have one.
Now, is there like a party that ensues there? Do you have a?
You know what? I remember playing basketball with some of our mutual friends, and I started running around because I was looking for it, and my buddy tackled me, and he was excited for me. He thought I had gotten in, but actually it was like I just got the nomination, and well, it's not nothing that's not getting in. So, but once you have the nomination, then yeah, you know you got a real shot now. And then I did get a letter from the Naval Academy after that, and you're either going to get accepted or you're not. And then there's a group of folks that can go to a prep school. So you essentially do, call it 13th grade, if you will, and reapply. And so in short, that's what I did. The long of it is that was a tough decision because, there's the excitement of, hey, you're going to go to college, and if not, you're going to enlist. You don't want to go to high school for another year. But because it was very laser focused for a very real opportunity the following year to get into the academy, and the likelihood was jacked way up once you do something like that. So yeah, it's like I'm all in. I got the support of my parents, and I went off to a boarding school that was actually out in New Jersey. So it was definitely a year of more cultural awareness, growing up in Dallas, Texas, and then going out to New Jersey for a boarding school. Reapplied, and I got in the following year. But that's how it played out for me.
Okay, so now you're at the Naval Academy, which is, again, no small feat. So we're really making some big leaps here to get there. So kind of tell me about what happens at the Naval Academy. What's life like there?
Similar to what it was like in Lubbock for you, I'm sure, at Texas Tech, right?
I would imagine it was a little bit different.
It's a military institution, so it's very regimented as far as the schedule goes. And I think a good way to summarize the Naval Academy is it's a leadership laboratory. So among other things that they're focused on teaching, you're called a midshipman at the Naval Academy, the students, is leadership. And so you really can't be a great leader unless you can appreciate what it means to be a good follower. I guess that's my opinion. I think the Academy has that opinion too. Maybe others don't. But so your freshman year is you learn to be a follower. And then your sophomore year, you're like this mentor. You're just happy that you're not a freshman. Freshmen are called plebes. And so you're helping train the freshmen, but in a very mentoring way. And then as a junior or second class, that's kind of the heart of the training, is that junior to freshman is the responsibility to develop and train those freshmen. And then as a senior, you kind of have opportunities to have, we call it executive level leadership, where you got some of the pain of being a bit removed from, we'll say, the ground truth or the real training, but you're ultimately responsible. So it kind of gives you a taste of all those layers in that leadership ladder. And meanwhile, obviously you're going to class. It's a very heavy math science curriculum. Everyone graduates with a Bachelor of Science, and they purposely try to, I don't say try, they're very successful at overloading your schedule so you learn time management. One of the things in the service is that the stakes are high, and a lot of times you don't have the time you would want to be thorough enough in something that you're dealing with. The art of prioritization gets to be very critical. So just spending 4 years in that environment kind of naturally gets you accustomed to learning how to prioritize, and you got to get comfortable, letting some things go. It's kind of the metaphor of, what are the rubber balls that can bounce, and what are the glass balls that can't be dropped because they'll break. But it's a 4-year program. I'll say that's an accelerated program these days. It's not a 5 or a 6 year deal. So it's 4 years or failing. And it's a packed 4 years. The summers involve summer training. So you go out into the fleet and join up with ships or Marine Corps units or submarine units and get a taste of what it's like to be in the fleet. And, upon graduation, you graduate, it's also your commission day. So you go from a midshipman to an ensign in the Navy or a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps.
And you graduated at a pretty unique time in world history, did you not?
Well, obviously 9/11 is, a day we won't ever forget, and certainly changed the dynamic of many things. In May of 2001 was when I graduated. So unknown
just a
to
couple
us
months
at the time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So when for you, or maybe this is how it goes with most people in the Naval Academy that decide they want to be a SEAL. When did you decide you wanted to be a SEAL?
I made a conscious decision my sophomore year because there was just a tremendous amount of growth that I needed to accomplish if it was even going to be a reasonable quest. So you're already under a lot of stress for your time, and you have to pass your classes, otherwise you're not going to graduate. So I just was pretty thoughtful about it and made a decision that I did want to put in for it. And the only way I could put in for it, reasonably speaking, to have any shot of making it, I had to get a lot stronger. So I just started carving out the time, saying, it's okay. The worst thing that happens is you get stronger and you don't get it, but it's okay. You'll still graduate and you'll still serve. And there's other opportunities that I would have been very happy and proud to do. But I wanted to be a SEAL, and so I just started taking the requisite steps to prepare myself. So that was my sophomore year.
Is there like a path or things that somebody would do normally if you make that decision at some point, that these, other than what you just said, the things that you were doing, is there some like unofficial pattern or path or something that you take through the Naval Academy, or
anything that you're going for? So like in that case, to become a SEAL, there are certain things that you have to do physically. So I was concerned about the physical attributes of it, and having a distance running background, that wasn't one of the areas of concern. So it was really almost every other space. So I just started getting up early, getting out to the pull-up bars, and just getting a lot of reps under me of a lot of push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups, knowing that you had to be able to like carry your body through the obstacle course. And I was so far from what I had seen was necessary. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is it's different relative to the strengths that a person has, because those are different. And there's certain things that are critical. So certain weaknesses that you have, you don't have to be the best at it, but you have to be over a certain bar. And so that's how I structured my training. And I think that's natural. I don't think that was unique. I think anybody that would go for something like that is going to key in on those areas that they're concerned about, the critical failure line. And as far as like a path at the Naval Academy, yeah, there kind of was an unofficial path, because you see the same people at the pull-up bar doing similar type workouts. And, there's a friendship that builds there. And if not a friendship, there's a deep mutual respect, because you're all kind of have some of the same, as you get closer to into your junior year, some of the same tryout gates. Yeah, there's certain milestones that you have to participate in to put in for it.
Okay, what is it about SEALs that makes them different than other special ops or special forces?
Good question. It's actually one I think the military wrestles with a lot, but I would say it's just the maritime component of it. So at a very fundamental level, that the SEAL community, the forefathers of the SEAL community is underwater demolition teams. So they got their start in the water and demolition. And so the overlap as it relates to, let's say, Army Special Forces or, Air Force combat controllers or PJs, is the SEALs are coming from the water. So coming from the water, going over the beach, then going on a patrol, or then going potentially through a house, but probably not an ideal setup. And then it just so happens that nowadays in the service, there is a lot of overlap in the missions. But I think the differentiator for the SEAL community is if there's something that requires over the beach or underwater, it's not to say that some of the other services don't do that, because clearly, the Marines spend plenty of time coming from the water. But in this spec ops realm, the SEAL community spends more time and resources training to that mission set.
Okay, so like a fictional situation where we need the SEALs, like what's the job that you guys are designed to do?
So the acronym stands for Sea, Air, Land, SEAL. And that's referencing the ability to be able to serve the function of surveillance, reconnaissance, direct action, and a host of others, but I'll kind of leave those as like some basic big umbrellas of mission sets and be able to do those missions starting and leaving from the sea, the air, or the land. And again, I think what differentiates the SEAL community is the level at which we can do those missions and still come from the sea and go back out to the sea.
Okay, so you've graduated from the Naval Academy, and at that point, you want to be a SEAL. So do you apply to be a SEAL? And if so, what happens from there?
Yeah, so you do. So everybody at the Service Academy puts in, an application, if you will. There's a process of, call it service selection. What warfare community you want to be a part of, an aviator, drive submarines, drive ships, be a Navy SEAL. So you put in your application, and there's a process. There's, each community has an interview board, and they call it the needs of the Navy. So there's a certain amount of spots available. Billets is the word that they would use. And, it's a numbers game. Some communities have more spots than others. My year, it was very selective for the SEAL community. It's always selective, meaning there's more people that put in for it than they have billets available. So there were 16 spots in my year for our class, and I'd say just shy of 100 put in for it. And it was a great company, and to this day, I'd say it's one of the most kind of humbling in a positive way. Meaning, I couldn't believe that I was one of 16 from the group that put in, but it just really, but anyways, that's the process. So then what happens is, okay, then that's about, what does that happen? Right before you start second semester, I think, or right about then. So you got about a semester to go before you graduate. You know what you're going to do. And upon graduation, you literally get orders, paper, printed out, and your orders from the Naval Academy to, in the case of a SEAL, you're going out to basic underwater demolition SEAL school in Coronado, California. And you'll have a different start date, so they'll kind of stagger out of the 16. 4 would be in a certain month, and for another 4, like 3 months later. And you have a class, and there's a BUDS class number. So like I was BUDS class 238.
How many people are in that class?
So we started with 150, and we didn't finish. We certainly didn't finish with 150, but yeah, the classes, I don't think they can take more than 150. It's kind of a cap on the program they're running, but maybe they can more now. I'm not sure.
It sounds like anywhere between 1 and 16 of them came from the Naval Academy. Where do the other people come from?
Yeah, so there's a certain percentage of the folks that are officers, and that's a smaller number. Our class had a lot of officers. I think normally you'd have like 8% maybe, 5 to 10% of a class is going to be officers. And then the rest are enlisted guys, meaning they're coming from either the fleet or they came, I'll say, kind of straight from boot camp. And the other officers are coming from another officer accession program, if not the Naval Academy. So they were part of a ROTC unit at, like Penn State University, let's say. Or there are guys that go through officer candidate school and then they come out to SEAL training. But I'd say on the officer side, those are the 3 paths. And then the rest of the class is enlisted sailors that were either in the fleet and worked their way to earn a spot to go over to BUDS, or they kind of came straight through from boot camp. And there's different reasons for why somebody can and can't do that, but that's kind of that's your group that makes up the 150.
So how long does BUDS last?
So it's about 6 months, through, is that right? The phases, first phase, there's 3 phases. So call, 2 months a phase, not quite. And it's front loaded on the attrition. So there's Hell Week is kind of this storied crucible, and that happens the 4th week, the 3rd or the 4th week. So
yeah, I think that's what everybody knows about or romanticizes about the SEALs is Hell Week and getting wet and sandy and all that. I can't even I'm not going to do it any justice as far as what happens there, but that's where most people leave if they're going to leave. Is that right?
That's what the numbers show. And that was certainly the case with my class. And typically that's the trend. So there's a tremendous amount of attrition before you even start Hell Week. Like my class, we lost a third of the class just in those first 3 weeks. So then we had 100 in Hell Week, and then we finished Hell Week with 36 standing on the beach. So then, you go from 150 to 36 and you're a month in.
Wow.
And so now it really kind of narrows the focus. It's
sure.
harder to hide.
But there's still attrition after that, right?
There is. It's much less, but yeah, there definitely is.
Is that mostly due to like injury or some sort of physical thing that may be out of their control?
Yeah, generally speaking, well, injury for sure, unfortunately. And then also just a standard of performance. So pool comp was one that almost got me. So that's where essentially you're like crawling on all fours at the bottom of the pool with your diving gear on, and the instructors just tackle you underwater and tie all your hoses into knots, and you have to like undo everything underwater. So that'll get a lot of people. And it's just a standard, it's not, you got 4 shots at it. If you fail, you fail. Land nav is one that sometimes will get some people. That's in 3rd phase. Sometimes on the range, you got guys that just struggle to understand the safety issues with the firearms, and safety violations can get somebody dropped from the program. So that happens, but that starts to get into the onesie twosies realm. But clearly, that's pretty painful for a guy when they're that far through the program and they
I can see
get bumped for land nav or making safety violations on the range.
You mentioned underwater. I'm fascinated by underwater. Take me underwater. What kind of things do you guys do underwater? Are you always with air? I mean, they're tying up your tubes and you can't breathe. You go through training about holding breath and those kind of things.
So ironically, there's no intense training on breath holding, because I was stationed out in Hawaii, so there were guys that were getting into free diving and stuff. So I have seen and witnessed some incredible breath holds. I could not hold a candle to. It's more about just being comfortable underwater, and you're going to have to be able to hold your breath for a little bit, but nothing, no Olympic caliber breath holding is going on. It's more about, it's kind of dark and scary, and being able to like just keep your composure and still accomplish what you have to do. I think that's the goal. And so the training, creates certain milestones to kind of help you get to that point. One of the things that you'll do in 2nd phase is they call it combat swimmer. So you have essentially a compass and, a watch, and you have to figure out, you call it your kick count, and you're doing land navigation, if you will, underwater with your compass, and they drop you off at a starting point, and underwater you kind of have to navigate your way, to a pier, let's say. So it's pretty overwhelming, because you're kind of like, the first time you hear this, like, come on, seriously? But you listen to what they say and it works. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, just thinking about it now kind of blows me away. Now I'm in my, married with 3 kids and all domesticated. So, not something I'm suiting up to do these days.
Pretty far from the bottom of the sea, right?
Yeah.
So when they drop you off, are you in a group of people, or are you by yourself, or both, for those types of training missions?
You're never going to be by yourself. So that's just kind of one of the rules of the community. So we're all about teams. And so the smallest you'd ever slim down would just be with a partner, called a swim buddy. And as a matter of fact, that's how you do all your dives. You always have a swim buddy. So so that part's pretty cool. It'd be rough to be all by yourself. But to answer your question, you plan a dive. There's a known point where everybody gets dropped off. So say you got like a dozen guys, you got 6 swim pairs, and kind of everyone just kind of rolls out the side of the boat, and off you go. And ironically, like you're worried about bumping into, like a dolphin or something under there, but it's usually just the other guys. It's like another swim pair you end up getting tangled up with somewhere.
You've blown stuff up underwater?
Yeah, I wish I would. I don't want to. Leaves a lot to be desired. I wish I could have had a chance to blow up more stuff underwater, but I've done training with underwater demolition. Sadly, I've never really blown up something for good reason, for mission, just preparing for the mission that, in that case, we never got called to do. But,
okay.
Yeah.
That's got to be pretty cool, though.
It's great. Yeah. Some good pictures, too, right? You got to, back before digital, when you actually had to catch it on film and to try to get the big water balloon coming up there.
Yeah, get the one shot, and then you had to get it developed, right?
That's right.
I don't know if people even know that anymore.
So that was right when I was going through training, because I remember I got my first digital camera just as I was going through the advanced side. I remember I got my first digital camera. That would be like 2000. It's like 2002 time frame.
So you make it through BUDS, and you're now a SEAL. I'm sure there's a pretty big ceremony for that, and the small number of guys that made it through all that. You guys are probably a pretty good group or a pretty tight bunch of guys by the end of that time, right?
Yes. Just like anything in life, shared misery can bring a group together.
And then you get your first deployment call or mission call or whatever it's called. What's going through your head? I mean, at this point, this is really happening.
Yeah, and then we're really blessed in the SEAL community to get so much solid training. So for me, there's quite a timeline there, even relative to good friends that I have that went into the Marine Corps. I'm still on the advanced side of trainings, and they're like deployed to Iraq, and I'm going up to Kodiak, Alaska for winter warfare training. But I started BUDS in October of 2001, and I showed up to my first SEAL team. Was it 2003? Yeah, it's like April-ish of 2003. So essentially, it's like 2 years of training before you show up kind of day one at your first SEAL team. And then you got to get onto a platoon, which I would say normally happens fast, but sometimes there's a bit of a backup. And so in my case, I kind of had to wait for a little bit to get on a platoon. But to answer your question, yeah, eventually I got on my first platoon. There was a lot of tragic loss that the team had faced prior to our deployment. And a lot of people are familiar with like the lone survivor story. So
yeah, I'm familiar with that.
So those guys were on Alpha Platoon. I was on Charlie Platoon. There's only 4 platoons at the team I was at out in Hawaii, SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1. That obviously, makes it, I'll say, more real, for lack of a better term. But, what it did was, you go around to mourn the loss of your friends, and you're attending those funerals and kind of see the aftermath of kind of people that have their affairs in order or don't have their affairs in order. And it's not coming at you at the moment from like an administrative perspective, but really just kind of appreciating that, you love your friends, you love your family, and it's bad enough, if you're not coming home from deployment alive, I'll say, but you really want the people to know, like you did what you wanted to do, like saying, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And so I remember for me, how old was I? I was 24 after all those, like when that happened. I was on my first platoon. We had a huge mission that we were training for. So there was heavy stress in the platoon. And I just remember like I actually sat down and when I had some time off, and I like wrote my will, and I wrote a letter to my brother, and, I was a little like overly dramatic, probably just because I was emotional after losing those guys. But it was actually really helpful because it just kind of set my mind right. It's kind of like, yeah, this is, there's no guarantees. Signed up for this, proud to be a part of it. That's what it means. It's part of the service. I'm not breaking any new precedent. And, it's mission focused. And it's a weird place to be when you're more scared of failing than you are of dying. But that's where I was on my first mission. And, I don't know if I could have got there mentally, if those guys didn't come back. I'd like to say that I could have, but that wasn't my personal experience. So I don't know. But yeah, you really got to get your head in a very serious place and you're hanging it out there. And we were like on that first mission on that platoon that we had, it was a big deal. And thankfully it was a huge success. So I don't know, a little bit long-winded answer to a short question, but it taps into some harsh memories from that time frame for me anyways.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. You went on to, I'm probably going to butcher the rankings and stuff here. I don't know them, but did you go on to be a commander?
A phone commander is what we'd say in the Navy, right? So a lieutenant commander will answer the phone. Commander, I would never do that. But so, yeah, I came off active duty. I had 14 years, just over 14 years of active duty time. And I was a lieutenant commander. And then I joined the reserves for a little bit, and I actually made commander in the reserves. But as far as my active duty time, I got out as a lieutenant commander.
What is the role of the lieutenant commander in the SEALs?
Well, lieutenant commander is just a rank, and it's more important. It's kind of like what's your function, like what's your role. It depends where you are. Yeah, for me, I was an operations officer at a SEAL team, and I rose up to become the executive officer at a SEAL team. So an operations officer, that's kind of the nerve center. You're kind of making sure all the platoons got their training, got their gear, their deployment missions, their training lines up with their missions. All logistics are lined up to get everybody out the door. And that's just when you're in garrison. It's not what happened. Once you're deployed, then you've got all deployment responsibilities. An executive officer is kind of your second in command. So you've got a commanding officer. That's the top banana. That's a commander, a full commander. And the lieutenant commander or executive officer is supporting the commanding officer. Generally speaking, like a simple way of saying it is the operations officer is taking care of everything outside the fence line. So you think you actually have a geographic physical location of the team. And the executive officer is all the issues inside the fence line, to include, like family issues, personal issues, pay issues. And that's a lot of how the functions get split up. The CO is just kind of in charge of everything, is up and out and down and in when they want to be. But I guess my answer to you is, somebody tells me they're a lieutenant commander, it doesn't mean much to me other than they served between, let's say, 9 and 14 years on active duty, but they could be the best officer that I've ever seen, or it could be somebody that leaves a lot to be desired. Typically, once somebody is given the responsibility of a certain function, that will kind of be an indicator of how they're thought of hopefully their peers, but then, certainly the more senior members of the community and the boards that kind of place those positions. So it's just military culture. It's just kind of like, I'll say it's similar to corporate in that, I'm sure there's politics involved on both sides there.
During your 14 years as a SEAL, I know you can't get real specific on anything, but were there places that you're just like, I can't believe I'm here? I mean, were you lots of places? Were there things you did where you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this right now? Like, is this real?
Yeah. Yes and yes. Yeah. And you just get used to that. It's kind of like one of the rules that I had when I went into SEAL training was expect the unexpected. So the only disappointment to myself would be, with, your internal dialogue, why are you surprised? Like if you totally appreciate that everything is going to be unexpected, nothing should surprise you. And that worked well for me. And so I just kind of carried that through my experience, on active duty. You're so limited in what you're always fighting the learning curve of there's so much more you should know, and then you have no idea where they're going to send you and then what your mission is. So it's almost like there's not a lot of time to do the wow factor, but there is time to do it. And typically it's, at the end of the day when you can take a shower, you're like, where am I right? Like, wow. I'm in Bangladesh right now. It's like, wow. All right. Or on a nuclear submarine, underway. And I loved it. Feel lucky and blessed. I mean, I wanted to do it and I was around amazing people, and it at times it was a blast, and, most of the time it was very hard work, but it was meaningful work. And then there were times when it was a blast. So, it was all good as far as I was concerned.
And life after being in the Navy and being a SEAL, you learned all kinds of invaluable things. And one of the most compelling things I've heard you talk about is intentionalism and mindset and coaching and all those types of things. So that's kind of what you do now.
It is. I mean, that's been a passion of mine since I've gotten out. A lot of people talk about the military transition from, taking the uniform off to, we'll say putting on the business attire for a civilian job. Of course, it's a tough transition, but I mean, I'm just here to say for me, it's like, I think I'm just now finishing the transition. It's been over almost 6 years. I got out in the summer of 2015 and we're knocking on the door here at 2021. It's been rough for me, meaning I've been disappointed in how I've been all over the place as far as like, pick a profession, like, and stick to it. I'm not somebody who quits things, obviously, but it's this precious life of like, hey, what are you going to dedicate yourself to? And I can appreciate much more now being where I'm at, why so many veterans struggle with the transition, because you're so blessed to have like this purpose driven profession where you want to wear the uniform and you're fighting for God and country, that it just doesn't parallel over. And so there's a kind of a mourning period, I think, personally, and to get over that and then just understand how you're going to repurpose yourself and still do good in other ways. But yeah, at least for me, it took me a while. The coaching piece was like my therapy with the transition. So, I've had several corporate jobs, but I just I missed the leadership. I missed like the mentoring, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing in the grown adults in leadership positions, missing what I thought were kind of basic things to people that I worked with in the military. So I got real passionate about trying to share those techniques of, like you say, intentionalism and, having a purposeful mindset, and sharing with people how I used that to make, things I wanted to do real, and not just allow them to be a dream, but be purposeful in reality, and bridge that gap. And then I've kind of morphed that into really talking just about individual character, because one of the things that's been real upsetting to see is there's so much sacrifice to individual character for just superficial crap as it relates to positions with jobs, sales numbers. And I just watch people gradually, good people, chip away at their integrity because, they're going to get extra percentage here or there. That's kind of been my been a message that I've really been sticking on. It's why I like to talk about journey greatly, that it doesn't matter where you end up. It matters how you journey. That's the real stuff. That's what you're most proud of. So I don't know at this point what question you asked and how I'm talking about that, but you got me going a little bit on my soapbox that way. So
okay. You're also connected with Victory Strategies. What do you do with them?
What happened was I actually started my own company, and I'm terrible at marketing myself, I've learned, and I love to do the work. And I'm married, I've got 3 young kids. And so I wasn't going to make it full time doing the coaching. I was already in the finance space. I partnered with a great guy, and I'm really enjoying being a financial planner full time. And then it was just kind of like a side hustle. So it was no big deal. And I would do it occasionally. It was just much less. But then I got connected with Victory Strategies, and it's just a blessing. It really makes me believe it's not coincidence, because it's just such a great team. It's kind of this boutique consulting group that has great experience of success in different spaces. And we teach a lot of leadership, a lot of team building, and do it in the form of executive coaching workshops, and some keynote speaking. But that was just the perfect fit, because what I love the most about Victory Strategies is the selfish piece of working alongside these other folks. And we're a little family, we're a little, in my world that I still love, like a little SEAL platoon, where we kind of feed off each other and we share ideas and we can learn from each other. And then, it's a lot of fun when we can go out as a group and we can help other people develop, and we can actually see real progress. It's that old adage, the best gift in life is giving, not receiving. So that is work that I love to do. And I'm really blessed that I get to do it with a great team, and I don't have to worry about any of the marketing stuff. They do a great job with the marketing, and I just like doing the work. And then, when there's work to do there, I do it. And I've really gotten to enjoy my day job, working with my clients, just doing retirement planning. I use a lot of the same skills I learned in the Navy for risk mitigation and understanding the importance of contingency planning, and just putting a lot of math behind it. So go figure, all that math science curriculum from the academy finally paid off for me, right?
It all comes full circle. All right, Adam. Well, we started with the banyos and the good old high school days, and we ended with the family man, possibly filling out spreadsheets and going to meetings and just living life as a former Navy SEAL. So I want to thank you for your service, and anybody that served to protect our great country, and everything you've done and continue to do in the future. And thanks for coming on with me, and hopefully we can talk again.
Well, I really appreciate it, John. I'd love that. And I think it's cool what you're doing. I love the title, and we'll stay connected. I mean, the perspective you have with what you've gone through, and just keeping the conversation going with your podcast, it's great. And I really appreciate that I had an opportunity to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thanks for spending time with the Ambiguously Blind podcast. Please rate and write a review wherever you subscribe. And for a complete transcript of this episode, connect and share with us at ambiguouslyblind.com.